Welcome back to the Shepherd's Pie, of faith for our messy lives. I'm Tony Kolenc, a speaker, a law professor, and the author of inspirational fiction for teens and adults. As we start heading toward the holiday season, consider the gift of reading. Check out my writing at anthonykolenc.com. You can find out about my six-book medieval series for teens called The Hardwood Mysteries from Loyola Press, as well as my ongoing adult trilogy from Chrism Press, the Incarnate series. And also check out the books from our guest today, Angela Shelton, and we'll be speaking about her writing and about the difficult topic. My guest today is Angela Shelton, the author of the Collapse series, the Y Chronicles, and a new novella in an anthology about human trafficking called Every Captive Freed. Angela describes herself as a person about human trafficking called Every Captive Freed. Angela describes herself as a person who moonlights as an author when she's not being a healthcare accountant during the work week and a farmer in the evening. She actually lives on Two Oaks Ranch in Georgia with her husband Tom, 2 huskies, a dozen chickens, and a herd of Angus cows. And she's also a member of several organizations, including the American Christian Fiction Writers and Word Weavers International. So, Angela, welcome to the Shepherd's Pie.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
It is great to have you here. And, it sounds like you have your own journey to becoming an author.
Sure, I'd love to talk about that. As you mentioned, I've been an accountant for many more years than I will admit to in public, and I've enjoyed that accounting world. It has given me a lot of opportunity that's been fantastic. However, I've always had this desire to write a book. My grandmother, many, many moons ago, and she actually made just enough to help put my aunt through college. So it was a wonderful experience for her, but I'd never actually written myself. In college, I had been encouraged to take up writing, but I thought writers don't make any money. I'm going to be an accountant. When COVID came around, I had lots of opportunity. I thought writers don't make any money. I'm going to be an accountant. When COVID came around, I had lots of opportunity at home, and that's when I started writing. I have been writing young adult books. I have a post-apocalyptic and a dystopian series, but this opportunity came to me, and I really felt the need to give some of the people
the Collapse series and then the Y Chronicles. I'm assuming then those series are not really about human trafficking or any of these other themes that you're talking about in this anthology. So maybe talk a little bit about, real quick, what are those other series about?
Thank you. The first one is a post-apocalyptic, and it deals with, ironically, a family who lives on a large farm, like my husband and I do, and how the husband tends to be a prepper. And so when things fall apart, he is prepared to take care of his family. And the series starts out with the youngest daughter and how she's deceived by a person that she trusts and wants to help. Second book is about the son and some trouble he gets into. And actually, the third book in the series does touch on human trafficking, because at the time my husband was working in sex crimes, so that came to mind. The second book is on a novel I read that was a non-fictional novel written by a gentleman who actually teaches at Quantico that talked about the aging population and the problems that it could cause in society and the potential collapse. So that series was written about what would happen if population needed to be controlled and you were forced into your marriage and you were forced into your job. So I explored that from the perspective of a 17-year-old who ages out of the system and is an assigned mate.
You mentioned your husband being assigned to sex crime, so I'm assuming the interests that you've had in wanting to write on human trafficking related to that. So maybe go into that a little bit and how that came about.
Yes, my husband actually only worked in sex crimes for 5 years. Special Victims Unit is divided into two, and he was in the sex crimes division of that in our local area. And he had a number of cases. And he had a number of cases. In that 5 years, it was very challenging. It was a 24-hour a day job for people in that division because they get calls all day, all night long. And it was very challenging for him to work in that environment. Seeing what level, and especially the children, I could always tell when he had a case that was dealing with a child because his demeanor would just slump terribly. I say he survived 5 years in sex crimes. And there were two particular cases that came up. One was in our area. I don't think he actually was assigned the case trafficked. And the gentleman who was running the brothel had heard the police were onto him and that they were on their way to his location. And he called a woman there, knowing that there was an underage girl, and said, kill the girl, because she wouldn't be able then to prove to them that she was underage because there's additional penalties. Or knowing that there was an underage girl, and said, kill the girl, because she wouldn't be able then to prove to them that she was underage because there's additional penalties for someone who's underage. So I felt like I needed to tell, even though I didn't know her, even though I didn't know the whole story, I felt like I needed to give voice to that. And then there was a second where the mother sold her five. It was just horrific. And I won't go into the details because it's too horrific. And I will tell you, it was challenging to write the book in a way that truly got the horror of what happens across without being graphic, because we don't want to be overly graphic and sensationalize what happens, because there's nothing wonderful about it. But again, I wanted to make sure I told their stories. I wanted to give them voice.
What is the scope of human trafficking, in your mind or when you're writing about it? What are you actually talking about?
My story and different authors' stories, both of them deal with sex trafficking. One story is about someone who willingly goes into it because she's young and homeless and makes the wrong decisions. Mine is about someone who's kidnapped into it. And then the third one is actually a historical story about Sacagawea. A story about Sacagawea. She actually was human trafficked. She was sold to the man who was the father of her child. Her services were sold to be their guide. But human trafficking is a huge plethora of things. It's sexual trafficking, it is work trafficking, plethora of things. It's sexual trafficking, it is work trafficking. There have been times when my husband and I went into like a nail salon and he had concerns that the people working there were being trafficked because they didn't speak English. And he stealthily gave a tip to one of them who immediately hid it, which made him suspect that human trafficking. If they do not have choice of where they are, what they do, where they can go, and they are being profited off of in any way, it is human trafficking.
Now, you mentioned how challenging it was for your husband, and I'm assuming also for you during those years when you guys are seeing one human being will do to another. I suspect when you're very close to something like that, it could shake your faith in humanity, perhaps shake your faith, period. How did you guys handle being that close to such a horrendous human act and still maintain faith through those difficult experiences?
My husband is ex-military. He was a paratrooper before he was a police officer, and he actually just celebrated his 25 years on the force. So he has a long history of being he dove into this 5 years truly trying to protect and save and rescue and prosecute those who were doing these sorts of things. Now, again, when he had cases that were children, it was very difficult on him. One, and he would get a confession out of them, and he would just have to walk out of the room and send somebody else in because he would just say, "I need to not be around that person right now. We got what we needed, and I am to maintain my distance. It is good for me to walk away right now." So it was very challenging for me to walk away right now. So it was very challenging. But I will tell you, it has made it very difficult for him, knowing what is out there, to feel safe anytime I am not with him. he does get very nervous about the potential dangers and that sort of thing. Especially when I travel for business. I often travel for business, and if he can't be with me, he gets very nervous.
You mentioned that this new anthology, Every Captive Freed, it's called, you said is a compilation of three different authors' stories. How is it that you even want to share about the other two authors?
Sure. Sarah Hanks actually runs Brave Authors, and this is part of actually a three-book series. And Sarah Hanks actually invited a group of us to participate. And when I saw the human trafficking, I really thought that that was a great fit for me to be able to get these stories out. And so I jumped on that opportunity. Brian or B.D. Lawrence writes Sarah's story. He also writes young adult, and it's well done, and it's definitely a little grittier, I will say, than mine. Shannon Neer is grittier, I will say, than mine. Shannon Neer is a historical writer. And when I read the Sacagawea story that she wrote, I was just like, did this really happen? And it was just so interesting. I will admit that I am not a fan of history. I've never been interested in it, but so I truly enjoyed that. So it's just joining this group of brave authors tackling subjects, because a lot of times when I talk about human trafficking, people kind of shut down, stop talking, get real quiet, and try to change the subject right away because it's an uncomfortable thing to think about.
All right, about the novella that you actually wrote for this anthology and kind of lay out for us the key aspects of it.
My husband, again, worked in sex crimes for 5 years. He always was frustrated by women who don't protect each other, especially young women who are just out to protect each other, especially young women who are just out having fun, having a good time. They go out with a group of girls and think they're just going to have a good time or maybe go dancing. And so often they don't protect each other, they don't pay attention, and date rape drugs are so common now. Quite often they'll see one of their friends looking tipsy, leaving with a guy, and not pull their friend back and say, you're not in good shape to be going with anybody right now. Stay with us. So I started the story off with a young girl who's the daughter of a single mom, because quite often, so those kids sometimes feel a little unloved, maybe a little in need of attention, so that when somebody pays attention to them, it can be a real trigger. So that's what happens to her. A guy pays attention to her and she gets drugged when they go out on their first date. And it all starts there. So I and it all starts there. So I kind of wanted to bring some reality into it in a little bit of a warning to parents to make sure that you're warning your children, to teens to be aware. And just because you're in a nice restaurant or a safe part of town doesn't mean that you are safe. Or a safe part of town doesn't mean that you are safe if you're by yourself. And to look out for each other.
Yeah, so it sounds like the beginning of your story, especially, is something that is terrifying because we know it's happening, and we know it's happening to teenage girls, including in our own cities and towns all over this. Did have some ideas that you've been able to garner through your husband or other sources on how we can protect our kids and how our kids' friends can protect each other. What are some good words of advice that you would give to people in these situations?
As long as you absolutely can, to give your child a smartphone. They are so dangerous. Children are on YouTube videos and they're in communities, and predators are looking for places where children are, little children, and they are grooming them. We've had instances of 13-year-olds threatening to kill themselves because adult men had befriended them and convinced them that they loved them, and mom took the phone away too late, and now daughter's running away to be with this adult male. So start with a say to be with this adult male. So start with a cell phone. Avoid as long as you can giving your child a cell phone. Once you do have one, you've got to put controls on it. And Kids are smart these days. Kids know how to get around controls to do what their friends are doing. If you've got controls on that phone, you still need to monitor that phone. They need to hand that phone over to you on a regular basis for you to inspect. So just those types of things, watching where are they on online? Are they playing games online? Don't let them have a computer in their room. Have a computer in a public area. Explain why in unscary terms. Obviously, we don't want to terrorize our children, but they need to be warned that it's not safe and that there's people out there who want to hurt them if they're not safe. So just being very cautious, especially with technology, because that's usually the first line of defense for any parent.
Yeah.
That's usually the first line of defense for any parent.
Yeah, great advice and advice that I hear a lot from anybody who's dealing with kids. But okay, what about kids are older, they go to college, now they're not even at home, they're off in a dorm, they're going out dancing till all hours of the night. What is it that they're supposed to do for each other to really have each other's back when they go to these parties or dances?
There should be someone involved, a couple someone's who are sober and rational thinking. Because as soon as you take that first drink, your inhibitions go down. You also have to be careful wherever you're at that's unsealed, or watch them open that bottle or that can of soda in front of you. Never put that drink down, because that often is how it happens. Is you put your drink down, you turn around, you go to the ladies' room, and you come back. So you have to have at least one person in your party is you put your drink down, you turn around, you go to the ladies' room, and you come back. So you have to have at least one person in your party who's guaranteed sober, paying attention, watching their own drinks, watching their friends' drinks, because that's often how it happens. And then just everyone agreeing that when this person says you're going with them, you're not going home with anybody else. That's the only way you can truly keep safe. And ideally, more than one person. And hey, if everybody can stay sober, you're even more better off. It's very easy to have fun and not drink. People don't realize that sometimes. Obviously, not everyone is, but abstinence honestly is the safest way. But even if you do abstain, you still have to watch your Coke and your water. You have to watch any beverage you've got with you.
So never set your drink down, never pick up a drink that has just been open there because you never know what's going to be in it. What's going to be in it. Keep each other's back and have an agreement in advance. Nobody's going home with anybody except ourselves. All right, so all great advice. So let's move on with your story a little bit then. So you paint the picture of this young girl who essentially does not follow that advice and finds herself in who essentially does not follow that advice and finds herself in what sounds to be like a pretty horrific situation. Where do you go with the story then?
She wakes up in a seedy hotel room and realizes that even though she doesn't remember, her body beyond her innocence being gone. And she is now waiting to be sold. And in this environment, she meets another girl who is also waiting to be sold. Unfortunately, my main character is 17. The little girl that she finds herself with is much younger. And the little girl is terrified, as any little girl would be. And so now she finds herself needing to protect somebody else and get somebody else out in addition to herself.
Yeah, so these are pretty scary.
In addition to herself.
Yeah, so these are pretty scary thoughts, I think, for any of us. Do your characters wind up having to kind of struggle with any, faith issues? Are there, I mean, I'm assuming when anybody's a victim of this kind of exploitation, they may occur. What are some of your thoughts on some of the faith-related issues there?
The girl is a member of a church and she's a member of a youth group. And while she's in captivity, she's thinking back on the fact that her friends back home are having their youth group, having their meeting and their time together. And she realizes that her faith means a lot more to her than she thought it did. And she realizes that those friends truly were her friends and could have been her support if she'd allowed them to be. Because again, support if she'd allowed them to be. Because again, she doesn't have a father in her life and she doesn't have a mother who can be there all the time because she's working. So she feels somewhat abandoned. But now that she truly is on her own, she realizes she should have accepted the support that was there. So I, to my own youth, I had a very tight circle of friends. I think that the more our youth can circle up and develop those friendships and build those friendships, I think the stronger they can be when things like this do happen to call on that friendship and on that faith. Because that what somebody else does to you or what somebody else says about you define you. But it all goes back to our faith of we are not who anyone says except our Lord and who he says we are. So I felt like that was a very important part of the story.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And
Story.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I won't ask you to give any spoilers about how your story is going to end. And I'm not so sure I want to know because of we know that in real life, a lot of these stories end badly. Although I'm sure there are some inspiring instances of people who are able to break out of this, have a very vibrant, wonderful life after that. I guess I'm wondering, people of faith who are out there who know that this is going on, what is it that we can be doing? Like, we're not being trafficked. We don't know anybody being trafficked, but we hear everybody talking about this topic. We're reading these stories about it, probably getting a little scared ourselves, and nervous. What can we do? What any advice for that the average person?
Yes, there most certainly is. First of all, be aware, keep your eyes open. If something is just like in the airports, if you see something, say something. There is the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and that number is 1-888-373-7888. Report anything that you see and find suspicious because they can help rescue anyone that is being trafficked. But the other thing is, this book are going into anti-human trafficking arm of the Tim Tebow Foundation. You don't even have to use that foundation. We actually had a discussion. There's so many good foundations out there that are working on this problem. In fact, after I had agreed to Tim Tebow's foundation, I found there's another one closer to me in Atlanta. Foundation, I found there's another one closer to me in Atlanta that is actually working specifically after someone's been rescued from trafficking to get them back to a whole life, which is tremendous. So, again, if you see something, say something, don't just ignore it. There as you see fit to help these foundations. These people are doing amazing work. I don't know that I could do that work. I can write a story about it and I can help try to raise funds, but they are doing some amazing work. And some of these people are doing amazing work to walk away from the life and refine their life what it should be as opposed to what it has been, which to me is the bravest thing of all, to be able to walk away from it and build a new life. So support them in that battle that they're fighting.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, giving good advice to our kids and friends and donating. Pray, I'm sure, is something. Prayer is important, and I think this probably should be something that we add to our prayer list when we're doing our own personal prayer and intentions. And of course, Tim Tebow. I went to the University of Florida for my law school, so I'm a big fan of Tim Tebow. He was our Heisman winning quarterback, but what he's done after his sports years has been even, I think, more important and incredible. So I love that that's one of the organizations you're working with. Um, do you have any insight? People might wonder, okay, well, fine, I'm going to give my money to whatever Tim Tebow. People might wonder, okay, well, fine, I'm going to give my money to whatever Tim Tebow or some other foundation. What are they doing with this money though? Like, how are they rescuing people from human trafficking? I mean, you can call a hotline. I'm assuming that's going to go to some sort of law enforcement and they'll investigate. Is that what these organizations?
On the organization, they all approach it differently. Some of them actually work to rescue people. Some of them actually walk side by side with someone, because someone who's come out of human trafficking, a lot of times they've got to change their name. They've got to change their identity, their location, and they're starting with nothing. They have no job, they have no income, they have no clothes, no belongings, no nothing. They're coming out normally as adults with so many problems and hangups that they have to address. So there's counseling, there's bringing them back, because of the fact that when you've been through that kind of trauma, believing that there is a God can be very challenging. So bringing them back to God, or even introducing them to the God that loves them, is huge. And then helping them with the supports to get stable enough in their life that they can find a job, getting them the education they need to be able to have a good paying job so that they're never tempted to go back. Because some people do end up in that world because they end up homeless due to financial reasons. And that's one of the ways on the street you can get food. So really getting them off of the streets and getting them the supports that they need.
Well, thank you. That all sounds like awesome advice. And I'm glad that although it's a difficult topic to think about, and like you said, people might want to avoid it, the more you hear about it, the more you realize it's victims. So it's really important, I think, for us to put a light on this in every circle, including circles of faith. All right, so circling back to you then, if folks are interested in learning more about you, your writing, your other ministries, and how they can get a hold of anthology or any of your other books, where would you like them to go, and where can they find this information?
They can go to Amazon for Every Captive Freed. They can go to my website, angeladshelton.com, to get more information there about me. I'm also on Facebook and TikTok, so by all means, look me up on social media, because I love to connect with readers and I'd love to talk to other people who have experiences with this.
Okay, wonderful. Well, as difficult a topic this is, I really appreciate the voice that you're giving to it and the fact that you are devoting some of your talents to shine a light on it through some of these stories. And I just really appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a very difficult topic, so I appreciate you tackling it.
Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for the show today. We've been speaking with Angela Shelton about things that we can do in our own lives. And again, this is Antony Barone Kolenc. If you'd like to check out my website, antonykolenc.com, you can find out all about my books, my speaking ministry, and my life as a law professor. But until next time, may God bless us as we realize of our lives.